double-digit seeds move on. Xavier beats Maryland, and Middle Tennessee State wins over Minnesota. Let's start with the Blue Raiders. What impressed you the most about their victory?
Yeah, everybody's kind of said it. It wasn't even an upset, it didn't feel like. I mean, a lot of people picked them. They were favored in Vegas. And we saw them beat Michigan State last year and play pretty much a perfect game against the number 2 seed Spartans. And this year, they were a better team. They won 30 games. They have some of the key players back from last year, Reggie Upshaw and Giddy Potts, and then they bring in Arkansas transfer Ja'Cory Williams, and they had a lot of weapons. And again, they shot well from 3-point range. And then in the second half, Minnesota made that run, and it looks like, okay, maybe Minnesota's going to get this done and get the comeback done. But Reggie Upshaw made like 3 big shots in a row. He ended up finishing with almost a double-double, and it just looks like it's a very good team that is much better than a 12 seed. And Minnesota had some issues. Nate Mason struggled to score pretty much the entire game. Reggie Lynch, the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, got into foul trouble, was on the bench a lot. So Middle Tennessee took advantage of those situations and just played a good game from start to finish, and doesn't just look significantly better than their seed. And looks like even a threat to get to the Sweet 16.
Wow. You're talking about seeds, and both of those double-digit losses, double-digit wins came against Big Ten teams. Minnesota, a lot of questions about it. If they were overseeded, the same could be said for Maryland. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, probably the Big Ten seedings were a little bit strange, especially when Wisconsin was an 8 compared to Minnesota as a 5. I know Minnesota finished strong, but it was still kind of surprising to see those seeds. The Big Ten certainly not the strongest year for the conference, and I don't think anybody. These are the 2 so-called upsets of the day, but nobody was particularly surprised. Neither Maryland hadn't played well down the stretch either. So, it's easy to say in retrospect, but it was a type of game where it certainly felt that the 12 seed was much better than a 12, and the 5 seed was worse than a 5, because there was no fluke quality to it. If you played that 10 times, I think Middle Tennessee wins the majority of the time.
Which seed do you think that they missed on more, Minnesota or Maryland?
Probably Minnesota. Although, Maryland, the way they finished this season, I guess they were probably overseeded a little bit. But just that Minnesota was a 5, I think a lot of people were surprised by that. And to be 3 spots ahead of Wisconsin, to be only 1 spot below Purdue, I think if you look at their numbers, their advanced stats and all that, they just didn't really fit the profile of a 5 seed. They were a good defensive team this year for sure. And then they also had an injury. Keem Springs, one of their guards, was out for this game, so that kind of hurt them more going into the tournament. So I think Minnesota was probably a little bit more overseeded.